Hey, Fire fans and MLS fans, it's Nick here at the Feed the Fire podcast. Kind of just doing an improvised show here a little bit. Haven't taken a lot of time to put together a full, complete rundown because honestly, I'm feeling a little rundown. A lot going on at work. There's been a lot that we've been talking about with the Chicago Fire, looking at all their new signings, all the rumors, which I think were pretty well set now. Yeah, everyone knows that Neymar will not be coming to Chicago. So it's been a wild couple weeks covering all the moves that the Chicago Fire have been making and seeing how they're going to fit in and projecting starting lineups and who's in, who's out, and who's wearing what number and what are the Fire going to do this season. So we're just going to kind of take it easy in today's episode. We're actually going to look at which North American competitions that the MLS clubs will be participating in. The league has released which clubs will be participating in Leagues Cup, in US Open Cup, in Champions Cup, which we kind of knew that one already. And then we're going to just look at a couple other highlights from around Chicago Fire, the news sphere, if you will. So let's now get into what's going on with the North American Cup qualification. So there are 4 tournaments that MLS clubs will be participating in: Concacaf Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, the Lamar Hunt US Open Cup, some welcome news for fans of that competition and fans of just American soccer history that MLS first teams will be back and competing in that tournament, as well as the Canadian Championship. That's the 4th tournament there just north of the border from us here. So here's what MLS has said about these cup competitions. Major League Soccer has announced MLS club qualification criteria for official North American Cup competitions during the 2025 and 2026 seasons, as well as the 2025 participants. The 4 tournaments, which we listed, provide important opportunities for clubs to compete for championships outside of MLS play. In addition to these North American tournaments, Seattle Sounders FC and Inter Miami CF will also represent MLS in the FIFA 2025 Club World Cup, joining other top teams from around the world this summer. So here is the overview now on how these clubs get to participate in these various tournaments. MLS club participation in these competitions rewards club performance, manages player workload, and ensures every MLS club can compete in at least one, but no more than 2 North American competitions that run concurrently with the MLS League season. So there is a lot to unpack there, fans, in that first sentence. The competition awards performance. Yeah, you got to win. You're going to want to be in the better competition. The league's going to want to put you in better competitions, get you more exposure, get you potentially more prize money, and all the things that come with being on a national and global scale if you are performing well. The second one here, they nail it right away. Manages player workload. Wow, hasn't that been the biggest complaint? Not just from players and teams in MLS, but around the world. Players are saying that there's too many games. There are too many matches, too many tournaments, too many things that they're expected to participate in, and it is really increasing injuries and causing players to take additional time off. We're seeing squad rotations. We're seeing tons and tons of transfer fees going to players who then aren't performing at 100%. And so there's a lot of criticism in the global soccer conversation about load management, schedule condensation, congestion, whatever one of those phrases you want to use. The fact is that there are many, many more games that players are being expected to play at their highest and at their best. Now, as a fan, I'm like, yeah, give me more soccer. The more stuff that I can tune in and watch and have fun with my family and friends and talk about here on the show, that would be wonderful. I want to see as much soccer as possible. But then as a fan too, you've got to have that line where you realize that at some point the quality of what you're watching is going to drop, that there's going to be an oversaturation. I do enjoy taking in some European games before my MLS matches on the weekends. I would love to catch some of the Liga MX stuff, just to see the different styles of play and get to know the different players. It is almost impossible to kind of keep your thumb on the pulse or a finger on the pulse. You never want to use your thumb on the pulse because your thumb has its own pulse and you can't find the right pulse then. To keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on around global soccer. Maybe you just want to watch Champions League and then your local team, whatever the case may be. So as a fan, there is a line, and I think we are approaching it. And I think the MLS is recognizing that now and trying to do something in order to alleviate the schedule congestion, this oversaturation of the soccer viewing market. And also you're seeing them be responsive to a lot of the fan, I don't know if demands is the right word, but the fan reactions that have really come to the forefront about not being able to watch all the games due to the bad TV schedule, neglecting the U.S. Open Cup in favor of Leagues Cup. All these different things are changing. Now, I'm glad they're being responsive. However, I really think that MLS should have known better. Either they were so egotistical that they're like, please, we're going to do whatever we want. People are going to love it. Or that they were just so naive that and ignorant to all these other things that they didn't know it. So I'm glad they're being responsive, but at the same time, they really should have seen this coming and probably had a better plan to begin with. All right, let's continue to see what MLS talks about these North American Cup competitions. So this qualification structure will be in place for the 25 and 26 MLS seasons and will provide guidelines for the qualification partners at the Club World Cup, at the World Cup, that are played here in North America, and it will be reevaluated for 2027 as the competition landscape continues to evolve. So there's another key phrase that we need to look at. Will be reevaluated for 2027 as the competition landscape continues to evolve. So this is definitely not set in stone. This isn't inked in. And I forget when the Players Association collective bargaining agreement is up next. I think we're 4 years out. I forget exactly when it is, but they're going to have to keep that into consideration too when they're reevaluating how many matches they're expecting their players to participate in and how many games these clubs and tournaments these clubs have to participate in. So I'm glad they're going to continue to reevaluate, and it looks like every couple of years they're updating and evaluating. We saw it with Leagues Cup. At first it was the Campeones Cup. MLS Cup winner versus the top team in Liga MX will play. Then it got expanded to 8 clubs. Then it got expanded to 16 clubs, and then it made everyone play last season. It's like, okay, that's too much, and we're neglecting U.S. Open Cup. Let's bring it back. Let's scale it down, and let's kind of distribute. So I like the reevaluation process, but at the same time, to reiterate my former point, that they should have probably seen this coming, but they are at least getting to those limits and then bringing it back as necessary. Now, Concacaf Champions Cup, that criteria is set by Concacaf, by the governing body of the North American Confederation here. And we've seen clubs make the Concacaf Champions Cup based on winning MLS Cup, winning the Supporter Shield, winning Leagues Cup, coming in second or third in the Supporter Shield standing, winning your conference, things of that nature. So those criteria are set by CONCACAF to bring the clubs into Champions Cup. Now, as far as Leagues Cup goes, the competition between MLS and Liga MX, 18 MLS clubs qualify to match the 18 participating Liga MX clubs. The top 9 teams in each MLS conference from the prior season will qualify. So MLS is putting the priority on Leagues Cup. Their best teams will be playing against Liga MX, and they've incentivized that even more, making it more prestigious because the winner of Leagues Cup, and I think even the second and third place teams, will get auto bid spots into CONCACAF Champions Cup. So MLS has signaled, if you didn't know it already, Leagues Cup is their priority tournament. We're taking the top 9 teams in each conference. Now, the note for this year is that due to the Vancouver Whitecaps' participation in CONCACAF Champions Cup and defending their Canadian championship title, they will not be in Leagues Cup this year. Instead, they're putting in the expansion club, San Diego FC. Great marketing from MLS right there. Obviously, you're going to put your new team. You're going to want to put the team that has a lot of ties to the Mexican-American community there, San Diego FC, in it, as well as giving this new team. And I think it's also in fairness, too, to give the expansion team. They didn't have last season to qualify for it. So this is a good trade-off to allow Vancouver to focus on Champions Cup and the Canadian Championship, and then allow San Diego to kind of get their footing with some of these non-seasonal tournaments. So I think that's a good move there. So that's Leagues Cup. U.S. Open Cup. From last year, the number of MLS first teams participating in the U.S. Open Cup has increased from 8 to 16. In addition, 10 MLS Next Pro teams will compete in the tournament. The 16 participating MLS teams are determined as follows. Only US-based clubs are eligible to participate in the US Open Cup, so obviously no Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. MLS teams not competing in Leagues Cup or Champions Cup automatically qualify for the US Open Cup, which is 9 of the 16 teams. The remaining 7 teams are determined by Supporter Shield standings, again, excluding teams competing in Concacaf Champions Cup. And for the 2025 tournament, that's 7 additional teams. So who is in the US Open Cup for Major League Soccer? This is the big news. This is what everyone was kind of looking to see, how they would join in, how many teams would get in, when they would come in, and who would they be potentially matched up against. So here are the MLS clubs in this year's US Open Cup in alphabetical order: Austin, Charlotte, Chicago. Cheers, 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 clap, everyone, celebrate. Chicago's back in the US Open Cup. And by the way, if you didn't see the announcement on social media, the Chicago Fire socials page put out an announcement that parodied the Michael Jordan announcement when he came out of retirement to play that second stint with the Chicago Bulls. And go find it. It's great in the way they set it up with the header, and then it just says, "We're back." So the little 90s kid in me was just so happy because I'm like, oh my gosh, my soccer club is back in the tournament that they have so much success in, and they did it parodying the Michael Jordan. We're back. Oh my gosh, my little like 12-year-old brain was just exploding. I loved it. It was so much fun. I think it was well done by the Fire. Now it's time to actually perform in the tournament, team. The rest of the MLS clubs that are participating in the Open Cup: DC United, Dallas, Houston, Minnesota, Nashville, New England, New York City, New York Red Bulls, Orlando, Philadelphia, Portland, San Jose, and St. Louis. So we're gonna get some potential rivalry matchups there with the Fire in the U.S. Open Cup, which I think is great. That's where you can really build on these rivalries and really kind of get some of that extra competition in. But also, there are 10 MLS Next Pro teams competing, including Carolina Core and Chattanooga FC. Those are 2 independent teams. They're not affiliated with an MLS club. Columbus Crew 2, Cincinnati 2, Miami 2, LAFC 2, Real Monarchs, Real Salt Lake, second team, Sporting Kansas City, the Tacoma Defiance, which is affiliated with Seattle, and Ventura County FC. And Ventura County FC is the LA Galaxy's second team. So those are your clubs, MLS Next Pro and MLS clubs participating in the US Open Cup. And I think the MLS clubs will come in the round of 32. So there's 16 MLS clubs, and then they'll all be matched up against non-MLS clubs, assuming that there's no kind of geographical issues or anything like that. So again, we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out with the earlier qualifying rounds. Now looking at the Canadian Championship, the 4th competition that MLS clubs will be participating in. Obviously, it's the 3 Canadian MLS teams that will be there. CF Montreal, Toronto FC, and the Vancouver Whitecaps FC will compete in the Canadian Championship tournament. It will take place from April through October. And what I will say is go watch the Canadian Championship. Like, it used to be just a foregone conclusion that you would have Toronto winning it, or that you would have one of these 3 MLS clubs just running away with it, that there really was no other competition. It was pretty much the MLS club that got to match up with some of the semi-pro or the USL clubs in the past, or now the Canadian Premier League teams. Whoever gets them in the semifinals will be in the finals and have the best chance of winning. But no, that's not the case anymore. These Canadian Premier League teams are starting to really build up some decent competitive rosters. Now, MLS clubs should be defeating Canadian Premier League teams, and just by the level of play, level of salary, caliber of player, all that sort of thing, structure, infrastructure, all that. But that's part of the reason why they play the tournament. So those are the 3 MLS clubs in the Canadian Championship. We talked about the US Open Cup as well. Those participating in Leagues Cup now, getting back to the tournament against Liga MX, we've got Atlanta, Charlotte, Cincinnati, Colorado, Columbus, Houston, LA, both of them, Miami, Minnesota, Montreal, participating in Leagues Cup. Good for them. New York City, New York Red Bulls, Orlando, Portland, Salt Lake, San Diego, and Seattle. So we're starting to see double duty on some of these teams. And then the 10 representatives from MLS in the Concacaf Champions Cup, which is the top tournament for club soccer in North America. Cincinnati, Colorado, Columbus, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Miami, Salt Lake, Seattle, Kansas City, and the Vancouver Whitecaps. So that is what's going on with the North American tournaments. Make sure that you're following along everything the MLS is putting out to kind of keep up to speed on when those games will be played, and we're going to see some of the breakdowns and brackets and things of that nature. All right, let's turn back now to our home team here, to the Chicago Fire. There has been a flurry of signings, and I really do encourage you to go back to our last several episodes if you want to catch up on everything that's gone on with the Neymar saga and how he was coming to Chicago, wasn't coming to Chicago, but I thought he wanted to go to Miami, and now he's actually going back to his original club from Brazil, Santos. That we talk about all of that there. We also talk about all the latest signings, Zinkernagel, Kwame, and all the rest who have showed up in Chicago, Barroso, how they've rebuilt the back line, even though it seemed like attack was the priority. Go back and listen to all of that. But as far as the Eastern Conference news and the Chicago Fire news that I want to talk about today, there was an article that came out yesterday afternoon from Matt Doyle over at MLSsoccer.com, the armchair analyst there, if you will. And he talks about what are the Eastern Conference biggest roster questions that need answering. And for Chicago, he asks, are Chicago keeping a DP slot open for the summer? And this is what Doyle writes about the Chicago Fire and their DP situation. Berhalter said this team would have 4 or 5 new starters coming out of the winter window and heading into the season. So far, they've added DP attacker Jonathan Bamba, TAM central midfielder Romanique Kwame, Swiss winger Philip Zinkernagel, U22 right back Leo Barroso, and free agent center back Jack Elliott. If Sam Rogers wins the other starting center back job, that makes 6 new starters. And Doyle doesn't think that's a bad thing because he notes that Chicago have been mostly terrible for a decade and a half. Shout out to 2017, though. So a rebuild is naturally going to see some guys move on. And yes, I think saying mostly terrible for a decade and a half is partly a polite way to put it. And he concludes his article on Chicago by saying, at the same time, it does make sense to keep a little bit of powder dry for the summer. For one, the global transfer market is more frothy at that point. And for two, maybe the data Berhalter gets in games that matter from February through June changes his thinking on what kind of DP he needs to add in July. So everyone has always been asking for, DP attack, DP attack, DP attack. But now, as we have seen the Zinkernagel signing, the Bamba signing, the Kwame signing, as well as the Barroso and the Elliott and the Rogers, do they need a more central midfielder? Do they need, as some people have speculated, trying to manifest Weston McKennie into reality, a box-to-box midfielder? Do they need someone who can shuttle the ball from defense to offense? Or do they need a more defensive-minded midfielder who can lock down the opposing player and control the middle of the pitch on the defensive side of the ball? So those are all questions that, and in this case, I agree with Doyle, that Berhalter is going to want to see some data points. And what we have seen from Berhalter's tenure thus far, as short as it has been built on roster flexibility and finding the right players, both culturally and tactically, technically, right, as actual footballers. So it would not surprise me at all if the Chicago Fire do find their third and final DP in this winter transfer window if that player checks all the boxes that Berhalter is looking for. However, I think it is more likely, as Doyle points out, that they will wait till the summer transfer window because you've got in the midfield now Kellen Acosta, Romanique Kwame, and Brian Gutierrez. You've got those 3. You want to see how that works, how those guys can play together, and whether you want Kwame pushing forward or do you want him sitting back. As Doyle says, Kwame, who'd play alongside Kellen Acosta in a 2, or as a free 8 if Berhalter uses Acosta as a single pivot. So when we say pivot, you're looking at kind of your first line of midfielders, your defensive midfielders coming up from the back. If you have a single pivot, that means you have one defensive midfielder that the defenders are trying to play the ball to, and he will then in turn transition to offense. If you've got a double pivot, that means you have two more defensive midfielders that you are looking to try and play the ball to in order to change from defense to offense, to transition from defense to offense. Now, of course, you can try to do that up the wings. That's another style of play, or you can, lob the long balls, as we've seen the Fire do unsuccessfully in recent history. But that's essentially what we could be seeing here. Acosta and Kwame as a double pivot, more defensive-minded formation, or Acosta as a single pivot, pushing Kwame and Gutierrez further up the pitch to try and launch their offense. I would expect that because we know Berhalter does like to use his wingers to play a little bit more. Well, actually, as I say it out loud, maybe I'll switch my thought. I think that since Berhalter does like to get his wingers integrated, that we will see Kwame start, at least initially, playing a little bit more defensively and see how he can link up and unlock Gutierrez or the wingers. So that is kind of what my thought would be, agreeing with Doyle that Berhalter is going to want those data points, as he says, to see where to recruit and what to recruit and who to get over the summer transfer window. And here's the thing. If things are flying high, if the Fire are sitting, top 6, top 7 in the Eastern Conference, if they maybe, I don't know when the U.S. Open Cup schedule is, maybe if they're having some early success, who knows? That he's going to kind of, not want to make a giant signing and shake the boat and kind of see what can happen this year. But and similarly, if they are scraping the bottom of the league again, if they are down at the 14th, 15th in the Eastern Conference, why waste the money? Why waste the DP spot on someone who's not going to make a difference? Wait till the following offseason or even the following summer transfer and let this team gel. So I do think we're going to see that third DP if the Fire can get to a good spot midseason. And that has always been the traditional MLS way of doing it with that summer midseason transfer window that, hey, we can make the push, kind of like your baseball team. Are you a buyer or are you a seller after the All-Star break, or when you're starting to get into August and September and you're pushing for playoff seeding versus are you actually going to make the playoffs? So I think the Fire will know then if they are a buyer or a seller by that summer transfer window, or they may just stand pat. One other Chicago Fire headline, CF2, Chicago Fire's MLS Next Pro team, have signed defender Olu Oyegunle. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Olu Oyegunle. It's got the pronunciation guide right there. I still can't get it to roll off my tongue. But he has been signed to an MLS Next Pro contract through 2025 with a club option for 2026. It's killing me because I had a friend growing up who had a very similar last name to that, but it had like the G and the Y switched, and I keep hearing that kid's name in my head when I'm trying to pronounce this one. That's the issue. But anyway, Oyegunle was selected 33rd overall by the Fire in the Super Draft in 2024. Greg Berhalter is quoted in this article saying that he likes the physicality and composure on the ball, which will be key to help them develop as a club, as well as bringing in this talented young prospect. Oyegunle is 22. He had a great career at Syracuse University, again, one of the top soccer programs in NCAA. He won the NCAA Men's Championship as a sophomore in 2022. Let's see, what else on his resume here? He has previously earned a call-up to the Canada U17 men's national team in preparation for the 2019 U17 FIFA World Cup, though it doesn't say he actually played there. And he is from Brampton in Ontario, Canada. And Brampton is a soccer hotbed in Canada, so no surprise that that's where he's from. He was born March 11th in 2002, 6'3", 195-pound defender, and is going to be a great addition to the Chicago Fire. We get a quote here from CF2's general manager, Alex Bowler, that I think sums everything up nicely here as to why they went after this player. We followed Olu in college and drafted him out of Syracuse last season because we see that he is not only a great person, checkbox 1, but he has excellent capabilities as a left center back, checkbox 2. With his experience, athleticism, and personality, he'll fit into our environment very well. He has some intangible qualities that you can't really teach, and we're excited for him to continue his development with Chicago Fire 2. So that's it. Got a new defender. Last little bit, kind of fluff, human interest, fun thing on the side of it. The Chicago Fire have announced their new kit launch party, and it is It looks like it's open to the public because they have put it out on their website. Here's the announcement. It says that the launch party will take place Saturday, February 15th at the Vintage Shops Wicker Park location. It's open to all fans. It will have a variety of activities and limited edition Chicago Fire by Saturday's football merchandise as well. The event kicks off at noon and runs until 4 o'clock. They've got Monday Coffee, they've got Revolution Brewing, they've got a DJ, they've got a lot of giveaways and things to win. I'm going to try and get media credentials. I was able to get media credentials for the Return to Red last year, where I got my nifty little Return to Red scarf over here, as well as my authentic jersey from them. So I'll see if I can get media credentials for this one. It would be great to see as many of the fans out there as possible. And if I am still not doing Valentine's activities with my wife and the family during that time, yeah, please come up, say hi, let's chat, let's talk a little Fire, let's talk a little life, and see what else is out there. Well, with that, Fire fans, I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. Wow, even though I said it was going to be a short one, here we are going on 27-ish minutes or so. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, share the show. Let's grow the conversation. Let's grow the sport. And as always, my Chicago Fire family and friends, let's go Fire.